This is Brian, Hunter on my right, George on my left, and this evening we're joined by Mary Lynn. And I'm going to go right into the my screen share here to so the segment that we're doing this evening is entitled Integral Community Practice, Learning to Interface with Education. We'll be utilizing the case clinic format. You'll see a lot of this kind of as we go. We begin with an introduction of the case clinic. The case giver this evening, that will be me, and each of the coaches. And so kind of the way that we do that or approach it is that each of the practitioners will take a minute to check in and are invited to share a movement or a gesture in reflection of their current reality. So as I said, the case this evening is learning to interface with education.
Can I take a moment to introduce yourself?
My name's Brian McConnell. I want to make sure to kind of keep control of the screens. I think we will, as we go, the presentation cover some of what we've been doing in the last year or
sorry,
within the last year or so in terms of the group work that we're have been involved with. So my role has been kind of initiator for the most part, especially within the last year. Although, as I said, we've as a Hunter and I had Hunter had come to a workshop that we did involving MIT within the last couple of years. So it's been over that period of time that we've been working kind of increasingly in increasing proximity to each other. So that's me. That's my role.
I'll be happy to introduce myself next. My name is Hunter Hartley. I'm kind of checking in on where I'm at. I've been spending a lot of time over the past 2 years kind of conceptualizing and working with a building that's located in downtown Roanoke, and over the past few months in particular actually getting some work done at that building and getting it from a shape, the shape that it was in, into a shape that's a little more suitable and usable for community purposes. Just kind of part of the work that Brian and I have been engaged in together, and with George as well. And if I had to share a gesture of where I'm at right now, it would actually be lying down and resting my head on a pillow. But from that point, actually going to sleep and having dreams, and then just this vivid movement, which I'm not sure I could actually actualize into a gesture, comes forward, and it's just a lot of chaotic movement.
I'm George Clements. I operate a business here in Roanoke, a florist business, and Hunter and I have an aquaponic system in a greenhouse that's located on the business property that we work on. And the building on Church Avenue that you mentioned was my prior residence for a number of years, trying to get that back into shape.
Your turn, Green. Mary Lynn, sorry.
Hi there. I just had some people show up at my house, and they walked into the house, and I had to get rid of them. So sorry about that. Let me see. I've been interested in and involved in sort of meta theory for about 20 years, and I'm very interested in what models might exist for getting to the next place in developing schools and programs for training in meta theory and its application.
Oh, I didn't know that. It's but I find myself kind of more recently working more with meta theory. It seems to be presenting itself in pretty readily. So it's good. It's always good to share. Find somebody that sharing comparable backgrounds or orientations.
Okay, great. It's good to connect with you guys to see where this is going.
Yeah, thanks.
We're at an interesting place in the history of meta theory.
Okay, so let me get back to the
Ooh.
So the next segment then entails co-sensing in relation to one another. I'm taking just a little bit of time for stillness, just silent reflection, and then to go ahead and kind of express that or share that with the group.
So if everyone wants to take a moment to find themselves seated in a comfortable position. If you're in a chair, maybe scoot an inch or two away so your back isn't resting on the chair and that you're supporting your own spine. Once you find yourself in a comfortable position, close your eyes and allow yourself to find your breath flowing naturally. Take a moment and bring your awareness to the area located below your nose where the air is moving in and out. And if you find your attention has wandered, just take a moment to bring your attention back to that same small area below your nose.
Anyone care to reflect back on that space?
I had a moment where a thought came to mind in relation to two individuals that I'm familiar with. And the thought that came to mind was actually a third person secondhand comment about those two individuals. And upon noticing that it was the secondhand comment, kind of a space opened up to really bring into perspective my own awareness of those individuals as it stands kind of in contrast to the comment that was made.
For me, this is this is a little change to the format that we've utilized to this point with Allie Middleton's suggestion and the work that she's been doing in similar settings, similar group work, and so. It's experimental, and I'm reminded once again of the extent to which, as practitioners, that there's this aspect of prototyping and kind of trying things, and how those respective boundaries and space are held and shared, and I think part of the critique that I get personally, I'm so focused in my use of language, and sometimes the reflection back is, don't let the language get in the way of the shared reality or the shared actuality in terms of what's really going on. So. It's nice, I think, rather than for me just to go into presentation mode, that I'm able to sense into the shared space and have a better feel for it before actually getting into the content or the shared context.
I find that doing this kind of reflection before you go right in is also very useful.
Starting to say?
Well, I didn't realize that the format had changed. I missed something, and I was a little confused. So I was wondering.
Just at the point that George is zeroing it all in, we change things up on him, throw him a curveball. That's true. We don't we're not working with memos that much. It's kind of funny how we. So. Let me go back to the one of the things that I figured out kind of in that process was that which I have a choice of two screens, whether I use a full screen or the Google Hangout screen, and I can use the Google Hangout screen and see keep my eye on Mary Lynn,
Sorry, I have an emergency that just came up. It's, of course, always happens when you're in the middle of a webinar.
Those things happen. So,
So I'm just trying to deal with it, but stay present.
oh, okay. If you need to go, let us know. All right.
I think I might have handled it.
Mary, can you see the slides?
It's just a white screen from here.
All right, give me 1 second.
Okay, I can see it now.
Okay.
So we start the case clinic with the intention statement. Entails my taking a moment to reflect on my sense of calling and in preparation to clarify a set of 5 questions, 5 prompts. First one beginning with the current situation and our key challenge or question that we're currently facing. So to address that, I went back to was actually a paper that was published through Integral Leadership, and it's also at the Presencing Institute, that was entitled "A Marriage of Sense and Soul," and how it pointed to a psychosocial condition various thought leaders, including Ken Wilber, had referred to as dissociation. Charles Eisenstein had used the term separation, and Otto Scharmer, in his recently issued Leading from the Emerging Future, frames in 3 different parts. So what's showing there on the left and the link at the bottom of the page is the link to the blog article. So the paper entitled "The Marriage of Sense and Soul" covers the Ken Wilber's book that he published in 1998, "The Marriage of Sense and Soul." I actually prepared the Wikipedia page, and one portion of the Wikipedia page says, "Subsequently then, but pointing to the work of Max Weber and Jürgen Habermas, the book further contends that modernity is chiefly defined by its differentiation of the cultural value spheres, or the big 3, arts, morals, and science, the beautiful, the good, and the true, or I, upper left quadrant, we, lower left quadrant, and it, or the right-hand quadrants." So I see Wilber's perspective in that regard. There are parallels. I see parallels between Wilber's perspective involving the mind-body problem and Otto Scharmer's. And so this graphic on the left is something that, following the first U Lab, with a lot of different practitioners influence, that I put together as a composite in how I was beginning to envision, and it is kind of a meta theory. There's so many different influences from Dustin Perna's and streams of wisdom, Benita Roy, Michael Fisher, in addition then also to Otto Scharmer's voice of judgment, voice of cynicism. But I think that they're all, from my perspective, and they're again kind of as a meta theory compilation, that they're all various phases of state stages. And so this is something that has been, as an image, has been representing itself in terms of dialogue with other practitioners and kind of using as a reference for the prospect of projects, upcoming projects. What I have here on the right, and there again in the reference to the link at the bottom of the page, is a quote from Otto Scharmer from his blog site. Main shortcomings of conventional economic theory can be summarized in two words: externalities and consciousness. Economic externalities have been discussed at length by policymakers and researchers, and many have tried to address them. By contrast, the issue of consciousness, by which I mean not only what we do or how we do it, but the level and quality of awareness we operate from when taking action, is completely ignored, not even registering as a legitimate component of economic thought. Why is it so important? And this is really, among certain consciousness thought leaders, has become a really strong kind of central critique of dominant Western capitalism in particular, is that as a social system, it's virtually right-hand quadrants specific and only, and it is literally the left-hand quadrants in that regard are virtually ignored. And so that's a huge disconnect in terms of operating systems, a real significant gap in terms of human experience and you know, translating his culture and interrelationship. So these structural disconnects, and as Otto Scharmer, lays them out, he sees three major divides that then also translate across what he refers to as 8 acupuncture points, and all those, all that human endeavor and experience and activity, then translating back to, translating into 4 levels of structure stage experience. So these structural disconnects appear as the iceberg, depict the broken system, but what is the root cause that gives rise to these disconnects and the resulting bubbles, the systemic bubbles? We believe that the most important root cause of these systemic disconnects originates directly from our paradigms of economic thought. And so those 8 acupuncture points, then this is a image graph that goes into greater detail, and we had colorized it to add consistency to the integral and or spiral dynamic viewpoints in terms of how these different levels work both as operating and how they function as operating systems, but also their respective levels are it's developmental that so state-centric roughly equates here level 1.0 roughly equates with a red ego level in integral spiral dynamic thought or perspective. Level 2.0 orange free market economy. Also notice here that it's very egocentric and consequently competition at the orange level, markets and competition are very prominent. Social market level 3.0 green tends to be I find the leadership working or orienting itself in relation to participative norms quite interesting. We may have a chance to kind of share our recent experience as a group in interfacing with a representative from the Virginia Education Association here just over recent months, and it was actually in a workshop that we were working with this particular table. So one of the other considerations then is the stakeholders in terms of the functional relationships between organization, learning organization, and others. Kind of that nature of the relationship and the interface between those respective parties raises the question: how might others view this situation? And so this is a recent local issue that we have been involved in with the Roanoke City school districts. We're considering the prospects of outsourcing the food services to the local schools. And so beginning in November, we came into some direct contact and involvement. This image here, this is actually a picture of my back, but was one of the meetings or the rallies that Virginia Education Association, Roanoke Education Association had conducted, comprised of community members who were, considering whether outsourcing of local food services, how good of an idea that was. And so over here on the left, and again the link at the bottom of the page was an article that I published the first part of the month. It's a pretty thorough overview, I think, of what the local landscape was like. Another potential stakeholder that we've been working with even a little more recently, just within the last week or so, has entailed what is called the Fab Lab. That's a project through Virginia Western Community College, so our local community college here. In preparing my slides a little earlier today, realized that Virginia Western on this project has come into just under a little under $1 million in grants and funding for this project. But So one of the, it's pretty high-tech equipment here, as you can see in the image. One of the parts or components of that would be 3D printing. And this is something that we've developed an interest in part because the condition of the grant of the ULab is that or the Fab Lab, sorry, that the Fab Lab be open to the public, and so we were trying to get additional information on that, and have, as I say, just within the last week, been in contact with some of the principals at Virginia Western in initiating dialogue in terms of the logistics, the practicality. One of the things that I've been reminded of in terms of the complexity, and I think in relation to the meta theory, the better your frameworks that you're working with, that's the motivation for me in terms of or in relation to increasing complexity, is that the rather than trying to avert complexity, that I'm a little, aspire to be better prepared to take on the challenge of increasing complexity. So regarding our intention, the prompt or the inquiry is, what future are we trying to create? And also, just within the last few days, I'm not sure I'm going to be able to remember that came into contact in Northern Virginia, in the D.C., Washington, D.C. Area, is a university that's consciousness, education, and research. Oh, the Center, I guess that's it. Consciousness Center for, Education and Research.
It's either Consciousness Education Research Center or the Center for Education, Research, and Consciousness.
Right. Thanks. And this is the photo on the left of some of the students there. But I really like seeing this. I guess sometimes in my integral experience, I think can be a little jaded, and I try and take a heart check at that point. But other things, I resonate more readily with. They just look at first appearance as though they're interesting and they make sense, and there's a vibrancy to them. So we've also, just within recent months, discovered Frijaf Capra and Hugo Batiste, The Ecology of Law, and I've just recently completed my reading of that. Not had an opportunity to do a review at Amazon.com, although I'd like to. I intend to. One of the quotes that I just earlier, kind of in my creative process here, took from the book, was knowledge of these principles of ecology is known as ecological literacy or eco-literacy. Hence, eco-literacy must become a critical skill for politicians, business leaders, and professionals in all spheres, especially in jurisprudence, and should be the most important part of education. at all levels, including the continuing education and training of professionals. And that's an interesting summation, because what Capra and Mattei have done, although they recognize the parallels in the structure of civil society, and really particularly over the last 300 years, they see the parallels between the economics and the law, but they see the law as being more primary. And I'm really quite impressed with the work that they've done, and commend them really for that resolve, to the point of fortitude. And I really believe that they're moving right to the very center and the very core of in proposing perhaps the most significant transformation, that we've seen in 300 years or more. In regard to our learning threshold, what do we need to let go of, and what do we need to learn? I've included on the left-hand side here where we're kind of talking about these 4 different levels in the number of thought leaders. Of course, they tend to be revolving. They share a publisher. So this is David Corton's 4 different world views, or 4 different stories, or narratives. And so, and this is from a PDF paper that he published entitled A New Story for a New Economy. But you can see these levels translate pretty readily in terms of world views to level 1, level 2, level 3, and level 4. Level 2 being that orange level, and as Fritjof Capra and Mattei have noted, that the dominant mainstream operating system from economics and law both are very mechanistic, very machine-like in their operation and how they work. And you can see that David Corton, in reference to that level, refers to it as a grand machine, and the worldview that I exist in a mechanistically interconnected cosmos, devoid of agency and possessing no purpose or meaning. And so everything is kind of externalized. Everything is objective. There's little or no subjective, intersubjective dimensions of human experience to be interrelating or working with. And that's a pretty good reflection of much of what the Western world's experiential level or reality is. So I'm asking the questions here: do we need to let go of the narrative, the story that we're currently telling, or perhaps do we need to do a better job of listening to the narrative others are sharing? And so, and that for me, that's the definition, a definition or attribute of second tier structure stage development, is that it's not just all about a single level of experience for the individual, that we generally kind of refer to that as ego orientation, but that there becomes some transcendence across those various levels in respect to shared experience. Where do we need input or help? And I didn't quite finish my slide. I mean, it's this isn't the end of my slide presentation. Thank goodness it goes on for here, but this is kind of where I ended up with it in my time and experience this afternoon. So I'm just I know I've done this at least once before, and that Hunter doesn't appreciate me doing it very much, but we'll have to coach him through it. So let's take 5 minutes of stillness, and we'll move into the next segment. No.
Okay.
Oh yes. I'm sorry. I do. Just a second.